Welcome aboard, whether you've got here by accident or on purpose. Whether you're kidnapped and held hostage and waiting for someone to pay the ransom, you have reached Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations, where we help people explode into their lives through full impact mindfulness. We're looking for people who want to create themselves rather than find themselves. The only requirement is the honesty, open mindedness, and willingness to try. If you're welcome nowhere else, you're certainly welcome here. Let the adventure begin. My name's Jim Ellermeyer. I'm a behavioral health therapist, and today we're joined by a really anticipated guest, Mr. David Pohl, an artist and illustrator of some renown. So as you went along through your life, apparently you happened to run into a gentleman by the name of Fred Rogers.
Yeah, I did. I got to work on the show for a couple years. Um, and so I actually was thinking about when that was, and it was 91. So I had, I had bought my house and I was doing some illustration for the magazine and I was dropping the work off at the magazine. And I knew that they filmed Mr. Rogers in that building at WQED. And I grew up watching this show. Um, I think I think the show before went nationally, it was on like National Education. NET was the name of the network, and um, and I remember watching it in black and white when I was probably about 4 or 5 years old. And I actually did not, as I remember as a kid, not really relating to Fred's portion of the show, but relating to the puppets.
Yes.
I love the puppets and I love the neighborhood of make believe. But so I was really, I just wanted to kind of hang out and see what was going on. And there was a viewing booth you could watch them film. And so I guess I figured out like maybe I could work on this show. Um, so I found the art director who was in the building. I guess they were working on a show at that time, and and I just asked her, what it would take for me to work on this show, and I think I gave her a resume, and I was very persistent though, and she actually years later she joked with me. She told me, "I only hired you, because so you'd stop bugging me."
So tell us what you did on the show, David.
Well, I was a scenic artist, and I did props, and we set up the scenery for the show. Like so, when they were filming the neighborhood of make believe section, we painted the dots on the floor,
Ah,
and we set up the castle and the house, and and if it was in storage and it needed little touch up, we'd touch up things, and would put the plastic vines on, and just kind of dress the set. And then I made props for the show, and the props were basically anything that needed made for that show, and eventually I started to kind of be the guy that they turned to when they needed posters, or I designed, when Mr. McFeely would come in and do the picture thing, and he'd bring a videotape, and so I would design the videotape box for picture. Um,
oh,
which was
wow.
which was I loved picture as a kid. That was when they would take you to see how crayons were made, or take you to a factory.
Yes.
Um, so I designed props, and yeah,
Wasn't
we
that
we
cool?
worked on the show. The show was filmed like 3 times a year, and they would be in production for about 2 months to film 5 shows. So they only filmed like 3 new weeks of shows a year,
Ah,
but they were in production for like 2 months to do those 5 shows.
hmm. And
And in the 90s, the shows got more complicated. They started getting little bit more elaborate. They had bigger budgets and things. I think it was so much fun. And like I said earlier, the people I met there, I'm still really close with a few people that have become like family to me.
so tell
So,
us tell us what it was like on this set. Give us the atmosphere.
well, the set sometimes it wasn't until later when I worked on it. So I worked on it in the early 90s, and then in in the late 90s, and I actually was really fortunate. I got to work on the last shows. Um, so the very last shows I got to work on, and that was really special. That was really special because everyone knew what they were the last shows, and it was really something to just be there for that. Um, but the sets were pretty relaxed. I mean, they worked. Everyone worked really hard, and um, at one time I got to, we didn't often get to hang out in the studio during the shooting. Um, we were back working on props and things like that. So they might be shooting when we're working on new props, or we had a studio space there we're working in. So I didn't get to spend a lot of time in the studio when I first started working there, but then later on I got to spend more time in the studio. That was always very special. Um, and because a lot of those people had been working on the show for over 35 years, they all knew each other. They were kids together, and they started, and that was really just that chemistry between all the people, and that family feeling there. There were really a lot of great people working on the show. Um, and one time I got to um, to sit behind the treehouse with Fred while he operated the puppets,
Ah,
and there was a scene where Lady Elaine Fairchild, that puppet, she was um, squirting people with a hose, and so the puppets were getting wet, and then they had to be dried off. So I sat back there with a hair dryer, like drying, drying the puppets, and then like combing their hair, and you know, retouching the paint on their face or something like that. But I got to sit with Fred for a couple hours that day and just watch him work the puppets, and that was just totally magical.
tell us about some of the interactions. Tell us some anecdotes about your remembrances of Fred.
Well, Fred was always the same. I think people used to always ask me, "Is Fred the same guy in real life as he was on TV?" And I always said, "Yes, he's exactly the same guy." He's very gentle. He's very kind. He speaks very slowly. He instantly makes you feel like he was so connected. Like when he was talking to you, you were the most important person in the world. He was just right there, very present. And it was hard to compliment Fred. If you complimented him, he would turn it around on you and say something like, "Well, that's very nice. That means a lot coming from an artist like you," or that means a lot to me coming from. So he always kind of returned the compliment, turned it around, and took the tension off himself and put it back on you.
Hmm.
And I have some records here that he signed for me.
Ah,
I don't know if you can see these.
yes, showing a picture of a young Fred Rogers.
This must have been around '96 because the one is dated. But one day I went into his office and I just sat with him for a while, and I remember we were talking about Zen rock gardens,
Ah,
and I always wanted to make a Zen rock garden. And years later, I actually did a piece for the Three Rivers Arts Festival that I called Toy Zen Garden, and I took Fisher Price toys and I put a stick on the end of them with the little wheels, and I dipped them in paint and I drew a rock garden. It was a very playful, silly kind of thing, but it was kind of inspired in some way by that conversation with Fred, because I thought about, I'm going to make this rock garden, but I want to make it for children, you know, or I want to make it like very playful, like a child would do it or something. But anyway, he wrote on this one for David, with kindest personal regards,
hmm,
and then we talked for a while, and then this one he wrote, "Dear David, you are special." I
hmm.
love this one. This was actually my album when I was a kid. This one here, it has a mirror on it.
Ah, wow.
See, you're in there now.
Yes, I am. I guess I'm special.
That's pretty great. Um, and then he wrote, "For David, I'm glad I'm the way I am, Pohl."
Ah,
That one right there.
that's great. You can see Fred with his handwriting.
His handwriting is beautiful. And then this one he wrote, "Today is new, David, and so is every second of your life."
Ah, today's new David in every second of your life. Ah, my
And it
goodness.
says Shalom. It's in Hebrew.
Yeah. Oh, in Hebrew?
Yeah, he would write that on his. Sometimes when he'd sign autographs, he'd write that he'd write peace or shalom.
Ah, okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I had a few really nice. I used to go into his office when I was in the building a lot, dropping off my artwork um, at Pittsburgh Magazine, and when I would go in there, sometimes Fred had a drawing of Snoopy by Charles Schultz,
Hmm.
and I think he had him on as a guest on the show, and he made the drawing, on the show. And it was a really simple, sketchy drawing, and it was so great. And I used to love to look at it. And so sometimes I'd walk past the office where family communications was, and I'd just kind of poke my head in, and I'd ask someone, "Can I just go look at that Snoopy drawing?" And they'd be like, "Okay." And so I'd walk in there and I'd look at it. And but if Fred was in there, sometimes I would just say hello. And so I had a few times where I sat on the couch with Fred and just we just talked for a little bit. He was always very open to talking and very receiving. And I became good friends also with David Newell, who um, played Speedy McFeely.
Yes.
And David's a very kind man, and his daughter was in art school at the time. And it's funny, going circling back to the beginning of our conversation, um, because David would say, "Oh, I don't know what she's going to do to make a living." She's and I used to think, well, that's funny. I mean, you're Mr. McFeely. Like what? Who would have thought that you would make a living being, like a speedy delivery man on a kid show? Um, and I used to always say, oh, she'll be fine. She'll figure it out. There's lots of things that artists can do in the world. I think she was studying photography at the time. Um, but anyway, she works in television now. I think she's a producer on a TV show or something like that. So she's doing very well. She lives in LA.
Okay.
At least
So,
the last I heard, I think.
yeah, the interactions with Mr. McFeely, I would probably suspect that there's many people who really wanted to meet Fred.
I think everyone wanted to meet Fred, and I mean, he would talk to people. I mean, I've seen some interviews with Fred where I think he would always stop and talk to you and have his photograph taken. Have you seen the show that Rick Seebeck, the interview with Rick Seebeck?
No, I haven't.
It's on YouTube. Um, that's a really good one. He interviewed him in the early '90s, and then I think he went back and found some of the lost footage from that interview and then made a new show of it
Ah,
for his Nebby series. But Fred tells the story of when he was working at NBC back in the day. Um, he ran into a movie star who he doesn't mention, but then it says that um, David Newell said that it was Audrey Hepburn,
ah,
and he wanted to photograph her, and he asked her, and she said, "Oh no," and he was very hurt. Like he was, it made him feel bad, and he was kind of hurt by that. And he, probably made him feel foolish or whatever. I don't know. He then he talks about that. So he decided that if anyone ever wanted to take his picture, he would always say yes. And
ah.
you know,
He didn't want to disappoint anyone.
yeah, he didn't want to disappoint anyone. Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's a small thing. He's like, it's a small thing to do.
Well, it's showing kindness to everybody that he
Yeah.
meets.
I mean,
Hmm.
Fred was really a remarkable human, and I don't think it was lost on me how special he was when I was working on that show. I was really aware that for one thing, he's just a true artist. I mean, I was really impressed by Fred as an artist, because he wrote the songs and he did the he did the puppets and he wrote the music. He was a great songwriter. His songwriting is incredible. Really beautiful songs. He's sort of like a Tin Pan Alley type songwriter. He writes songs that just like drill wormholes in your head.
He wrote songs that drilled wormholes in your head.
Yeah, they're
Isn't
just
that
catchy.
isn't that cool? I remember a particular the movie that Tom Hanks was in uh, when there was one particular scene when the writer from Esquire magazine first came to the show and he was trying to get something with Mr. Rogers and everybody on the set. There was a couple parents had brought their child in to meet Mr. Rogers, and the child had been able to say how much they appreciated Rogers in their life. And Rogers held everything up for like half an hour speaking to this family, and some of the staff was a little bit exasperated, but not much. And the writer was getting upset and impatient and saying, "How often does this happen?" And the person looks at that writer and says, "Every day."
Yeah, I saw some of that too when they would bring people in to meet Fred and stuff like that, and he would just, yeah, just he wanted to spend time with them, and people would be kind of looking at their clocks, and yeah, he was very generous. But I think he's a true artist. The thing I loved about Fred was, and I think what really connected me to to him was that he was someone who kept his childhood alive his whole life.
That's a great statement, David. He was a person who kept his childhood alive his whole life.
Yeah. He wasn't removed, like, it was obvious that he could just go there. And when he was playing with his puppets and acting out the parts, he was also playing. He was really playing, and I could just see he wasn't far removed from his childhood, and that's something that I relate to on a level as an artist. I think that getting back to that, talking about, all children are creative. All humans are creative. We're all creative, and and that's something that's connecting to that spirit of being a child and that joy of creation that you experience in childhood. That's a key to being creative. I think for me, and I think for lots of people. You know.
I absolutely agree. Now, Fred wasn't freeform. From what I understand, he was meticulous about the way that the show operated.
It was very scripted, and there wasn't like a lot of, yeah, what things weren't ad libbed too much. I don't think things were really ad libbed, or yeah, he really used every part of himself. Um, that's the thing that's really impressive. You know, he used every part of himself. He was playful and fun and spirited, but he was also very serious. And down to business, and was obviously a good businessman. And he wrote all the scripts. He was very disciplined. He swam every day. Um, he kept his weight at 143 because I love you. There's one is I, love is four, and you is three. He tried to keep his weight at 143 for that reason. And um, he was very disciplined for sure.
So, how could a guy like him walk on the streets? He was instantly recognizable almost anywhere.
He had a little office space in Oakland, and I think he lived nearby. And I don't think he walked. I mean, I know he walked the streets of Oakland all the time.
Have you ever met his wife, David?
I met his wife on the show a couple times, like at the studio.
Okay.
And I saw them at a restaurant. They were eating Indian food in Oakland one time when I was in a restaurant and they were there. And I just went up and said hello to Fred. And yeah.
So, if you had a memory, a lasting memory that you would share with anybody about Fred Rogers, what would that be?
A lasting memory?
Yes, a memory, one of the most poignant memories that you have of him.
Well, I think it would probably be that time where I got to sit behind the tree and watch him do the puppets.
Hmm.
Um, because to me, that was just, I remember being a child watching the show. I loved X the Owl. Um, that's the thing I love. Like Fred, all those puppets are Fred, and they're all very different personalities, but they're all part of his personality.
Ah,
You know, and I remember I had very specific memories of watching the show and watching Henrietta Pussycat and X the Owl, and here it was, I don't know, 35 years later or something like that, and I'm sitting there behind the tree on the other side. I've broken through the TV set, and I'm on the other side watching it happen. And I think it was just kind of amazing. That's probably my favorite memory. I'll never forget it.
how many people were quite envious when you start to tell them, "Hey, I worked with Fred Rogers."
I don't know if people are envious. People just think it's great, though.
That's just wonderful. I dealt
Yeah.
with a person once years ago, David, that their grandmother lived across the street from Mr. Rogers' mother in Latrobe. And most every Sunday, Fred would come to visit his mother. And sometimes he would take this little boy, not a little boy anymore, take him by the hand and walk him around the block. He said that was the greatest experience of his life.
I felt very blessed, and I think what's really kind of profound to me, though, is that there's a little circle of friends. There's like a lot of my friends, when I think about my little community and my circle of friends, um, there are people that I met at Mr. Rogers that are like, those are the people. You talk about your 3 a.m. friends.
Yes.
One of them is my friend Alexis and Joe, who I met on that show. They're husband and wife, and I met them working on the show, and we've been through everything together. We we've been very close, and they're like family to me. And that's probably the most important thing that came out of that show. Working on that show is that those relationships that I have with those people.
Oh, yes. Yes. How fortunate have you been in your career to encountered so many wonderful people in your life? And how many people have you influenced, David?
Um, I mean, I've influenced some people. I feel it's good to me when people tell me that they're inspired by the work I do, or you know, I mean, I post things on Facebook or I post things on Instagram, and sometimes someone just writes something, and it just makes me feel good that it brought joy to their lives. And my father was a school teacher he taught for 50 years, but he taught at North Hills High School for
Mhm.
35 years. And when he died, people came to his funeral from the class of 1970, and he died in 2009.
Ah,
And he had students come from the class of 1970 and tell me that he was the most important teacher of their lives, that he was their favorite teacher. Not just one or two people, I mean, probably a dozen people said that to me who had him. A lot of his students came, and that was really powerful. And in some ways it made me feel like, I love to teach, but I'm not I don't know if I'm a good teacher. I think teaching requires your full attention and your full focus. And sometimes I feel like I've tried to teach, and I think I have been a good teacher at times. Um, but I never wanted to be a full time teacher.
well, I guess that would be in the realm of your students. They would be the ones who could determine that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I had I won't. Maybe I shouldn't tell this story, but I taught at a college, and I had teachers tell me, or students tell me that like my lectures were a waste of their time, and I think teaching's one of the, because I remember having some teachers that changed my life, and I think that teaching is the most one of the most important jobs there is. Um, and I think maybe someday I'll get back to teaching. I don't know. It's hard to make a living as a teacher. It's sad these days because I don't have a master's degree, and if you're teaching adjunct, you don't make anything. It's really hard to do it because the pay is so bad. Um,
Indeed.
and it's a little depressing. It's a little discouraging when you're putting a lot of effort into it and you're not making much, and you feel like the students don't really appreciate it. um,
Well, in the 12-step world, David, we call that planting seeds. You never know when they're going to sprout.
yeah, I understand that. Yeah. And
But
I
in
mean, I've taught enough to know that if you have 30 students and you reach one of them, then you're really doing something.
Well, that's nice when somebody gives you that and says, "Oh, you reach one student." Well, you're not with them 8 hours a day, and you don't experience the frustration that I feel at times. Uh, so, we've always one of my favorite 12-step expressions is, "You can't think your way into acting right. You have to act your way into thinking right."
Hmm.
And it's action and effort in life that makes something happen. And David, I when I talk about action and effort, I usually give this uh, little talk about it. I say There was a person that prayed to win the lottery every day for years, sweat blood. Nothing ever happened. And one day they yelled up out at the sky. They said, God, why won't you let me win the lottery? And God called back down and said, could you meet me halfway and at least buy a ticket? So,
Yeah, for sure.
so that's what I often suggest to
Yeah,
people. You got to buy the ticket. You can't wishing and hoping and waiting for something to happen just doesn't work.
yeah, yeah. You have to show up and you have to try things. I mean, I think getting back to like how do you get there from here or
Yes.
here from there. You know, big part of it is just trying, and you're gonna fail. You're gonna be rejected. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten rejection letters for exhibitions or for grants or for projects or fun, and I'm waiting to hear about one right now, and we'll see what happens. And but that happens a lot. You just have to just keep trying, and just part of it is just being persistent.
Well, it's not how many times you fail, it's how many times you get back up.
Right,
And
for sure.
that's the way that we view
Yeah,
things. So quite often I'll talk about people, well, which end of the horse are you looking at? The horse has two ends, and but the horse doesn't move, only you can. It's a change of perception.
yeah,
So I would probably suspect that there's times in your life that you felt, oh man, I'm not getting anywhere. This isn't working.
yeah. Lots of times. I mean, it's one thing to like I think when I first started doing national illustration, it happened so quickly that I thought like, oh, well, I've arrived, and now I can just like coast. Like took me a while to get this boat sailing, but now I can just sort of coast, and I did for a while, but it wasn't like it wasn't hard work. But then when it started to, you know, the wind blows and the sail falls down, and like you got to figure out how to get your boat back up out of the water. And there's been many times like I've kind of reinvented myself as an illustrator, at least 3 times in terms of like doing a body of work and having a certain style, and the work you build a body of work, and then you want to grow, because an artist dies if you don't grow. You have to grow, and you have to change, and when you're selling something and it's a product, which illustration is a product, you're selling it to someone, they're buying it, so you're essentially making what they want you to make.
Sure.
And the joy is you get to put part of yourself in there. And depending on the client, sometimes you get to put a lot of yourself, and sometimes you don't get to put much of yourself. But if you want to grow, you have to change, and change is always hard. Change is always painful sometimes.
Well, I've often talked about that what's good today, what sells today may not be there tomorrow. And everything changes. And I often suggest to people that they have to be flexible and malleable and adaptable to situations. We don't want to be willful, we want to be willing. And sometimes I'll use this illustration. I'll say, have you ever seen a thoroughbred horse race? Well, yes, they're big, magnificent animals and they can do one thing and they can do it well. However, what do they have over their eyes? Uh, Blinders.
Hmm.
So when we're just focused and we do one thing and we have an expert's mind, and I often say, have you ever been around a 3 or 4 year old child, uh, and they view the world with wonder and with everything new? And I don't know when we lose that, but we have to be able to adapt to the times. If Sears and Roebuck would have adapted to the changing technology, they'd still be in business. And at one time, they were the largest retailer in the world. However, now they're bankrupt. And I say, well, I use Amazon as an example. I'll say, well, they adapted to the times. However, if they don't continue to change and adapt, they'll be bankrupt also.
Yeah, Sears started as a catalog
Yes.
business, which is interesting too.
Yes, it
Is
did.
they didn't have stores. They started, almost like online shopping, and you looked at a book, and then you bought the thing from a book, like a picture in a book.
I couldn't wait when I was young. I couldn't wait until the Sears toy catalog came out at Christmas.
Yeah, I don't really remember the Sears catalog, but I definitely remember the Sunday paper would come and it would have like the toy ads.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I just loved to peruse those. Most of the things I wasn't going to get, but we could
yeah.
always we could always dream. Where do you go from here, David? What goes on in your life?
I'm I'm painting again, um, and I had quit painting for quite a while, and I had decided maybe like 8 or 9 years ago that I was just going to focus on my illustration work, and I was going to not make work for myself, and I was going to, and then the Mattress Factory invited me to be in a show there in 2017, I think, and I did this video installation, and it's on my website. If you go to davidpohl.com, there's a link for the Mattress Factory show, and that was a really interesting piece of art that I made. It was a video installation with music and sound, and that was a pretty interesting thing. But that was really the only thing I did that wasn't commercial work for about 8 or 9 years, and then I think that I started thinking, well, I've reached a dead end here. I need to like start doing personal work again, start exploring my soul work again, through the work. Um, so last year I started painting, and right now my girlfriend Kara and I are working on my house, and um, I'm going to be moving my studio up to the third floor, um, and I'm looking forward to like just doing more of work for myself and trying to find more of a balance between professional work and the personal work, and I've been posting some of my paintings online, and been getting a really nice response from people. It's hard to sell paintings, um, but uh, but that's what I'm going to focus on for the next year at least. I mean, this winter, um, one thing about COVID that's really been amazing is that I think it's forced everybody to slow down. And I lost a few jobs this year that I knew I was supposed to get. They were related to, you know, I do work sometimes for theatrical and theater companies and that kind of thing, music shows and things, and so those things aren't happening. Um, so it gave me some time to just do some work, and it reconnected me to that and how much joy it brings me, and so that's what I'm going to focus on this winter. I want to spend a month after the holidays. I want to try to spend a month every day in my studio just working on my paintings.
Ah, a month
I'm kind
every
of
day.
wrapping up a body of work that I started where I have about probably 30 paintings up there right now.
Okay. Are you excited about your life again, David?
Yeah, I'm always excited about my life.
Wonderful. That's great. It's great to have that spark and that drive.
I mean, for the most part, I am. Yeah. That doesn't mean I don't get depressed or down or, but yeah, I'm always excited about my life, and I'm excited about life in general.
Well, in the 12-step world, we have a saying, all days are good, some are better than others.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we only get one life, this is it, and hasn't always been good the way I've lived my life in terms of living for the moment, living for the day. I know I could do better at planning for the future and things like that. And I think as I'm getting older, I've reached a balance with that now in my life, and it feels good.
Well, I always suggest to people to spend their time as if it were currency, to be mindful of how they choose to spend their most valuable asset, and that's their time.
Time is the most valuable thing that we have. I know I've always felt that.
Absolutely. Time is the most valuable possession we have. And I often suggest to people you wouldn't walk down the streets of Pittsburgh throwing $20 bills on the ground or burning 50s. However, people do that with the most valuable asset that they have.
Right.
And the fact that you have a choice on how to spend it is, I think, one of the most valuable habits. So I have all these tattoos all over me, and one of them says "I choose." Okay, and I consider "I choose" to be the two most powerful words in a person's vocabulary, David.
Hmm.
Absolutely. So 90% of cognitive behavioral therapy is changing the language and the way you speak to yourself. And that's why I have this one tattoo on here. I don't know if you can see it, but it says abracadabra. Uh, and when you think of the term abracadabra, David, what comes to your mind?
um, like, well, actually, Rocky and Bullwinkle.
I love
Hey,
Rocky.
Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of a hat.
Yes, it's like magic, making something appear,
Yeah,
right? Actually, it's a real word. It comes from the Bible's Jesus time. It's Aramaic, and roughly what it translates into, I speak what I create what I speak. So the language and the way that you speak to yourself, your perception, that's when I tell people we're going to make magic in your head. That's what I mean, abracadabra.
Oh wow, I had no idea. That's great. Wow, I didn't realize where that word came from. I just thought it was a magician's, nonsense word or something.
Well, it's a real word. It's Aramaic, so that's a little tidbit that you can titillate your friends with. Well, David, you've been delightful, and I hope that we can catch up again in the future. Uh, and at the end of every podcast, David, we offer a free prescription: fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Unplug your television and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience, we suggest that you fish without bait. Do a kindness for yourself and do a kindness for another. Forgive yourself and forgive another. Till all are free, none are free. Namaste.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.